Good morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on 98.3 Mainland FM, the sound of Lagos. The time check right now is 7:42 a.m. Apologies, we're starting a few minutes behind time. We had to put some certain things in place right here. However, let's get on to business. Trends in the Papers is the part where we get to talk about the trending stories on the front pages of our major dailies, and that is exactly what we are going to be doing. My name is Omobola Sandra, and I'll be having Fuhad Saheed joining in via the phone line to give analysis to the stories that we're going to be having this morning. I promise it to be an interesting one, but more importantly, how are you doing? And I know it's a normal question that people ask, or people just ask because they just want to ask. But the truth is, I'm actually really concerned. How are you doing? How are you getting to work? How were you able to get home yesterday? Where are you right now? Were you able to get a bus? Were you able to get to work? What was what were the constraints that you went through before you actually were able to get a bus to work? At the end of the day, we understand that it is biting really hard into a lot of people's pockets. The stress of having to trek some distances just because you can't get buses and all of that. But we can only hope and pray for the country, and hopefully some sort of clarity will be put on all of this issue, and before the end of the week something will happen. Hang in there. We really care, and please stay hopeful. We can't give up on this country anytime soon. We just have to believe that somewhere, someone, somehow will be able to turn things around. Good morning, Fuad.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra.
How are you doing?
I like your statement of hope this morning.
It's very important. So
honestly, sounded like somebody from the pulpit, encouraging congregants to be hopeful about the country. But it's a good one. It's a good one. We have to remain hopeful. We can't give up on the country. We have no other country, and it's a blessed country, I must say. So we're going to get there, definitely.
All right, thank you very much, Fuhad. We are going to get there. I know that everyone, including Fuhad, I don't know if Fuhad, the thought that you were able to get, if you've not exhausted it or if it's not even almost out.
What I've tried to do is to reduce my movement. Any unnecessary movement is cancelled for now.
For now.
The little fuel I have in my car is just to take me to work, get me to do the normal things I need to do for today. And then hope that, all of this will be resolved. But I must say that I think a number of filling stations started dispensing a number, but the crowds are still there. But it's not as bad as yesterday when all of the petrol stations were locked up. A number of them are opened now, but the prices are a bit high, higher than usual. So, but we'll see what happens now that I think the government is also making some clarification about the inauguration statement. So I think there's a bit of double doubt. There's a bit of clarity now, because again, whatever happened with the inauguration speech was the reason for the panic. There was a lot of panic out there, But I think somehow we'll get back to normal and then begin to talk more about how to develop this country.
That is it. Moving forward. Let's move on now to the trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. I have the papers here with me: The Guardian, The Punch, Vanguard, and of course the Nation newspaper. I'll be starting with the Guardian newspaper, and the major headline there: morning after inauguration, nationwide chaos, pain as stakeholders seek caution on subsidy removal. And that story is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. So just very quickly, let's see what we have in that particular story. We have riders here. Tinubu backpedals as NNPC claims federal government is owing NNPC 2.8 trillion naira. Shetima: Nigerians will soon appreciate federal government's position on subsidy removal. Marketers divided as Moman, Ipman, Dapman back move. Nigeria's 36.9 million MSMEs, 96.7% businesses face collapse. TUC: NUPENG reject immediate subsidy removal. NLC: instead of hope, Tinubu's inauguration day brought tears and sorrow. Fuad, we're having a conversation, behind the scene yesterday, and I'm just going to ask a question before we move on to some other parts of the riders of this story. Uh, if we look at the situation that we're in critically, do you think that the information could have been better passed tactfully, or it was just an inevitable situation that we were eventually going to find ourselves in as Nigerians?
Sandra, we've always talked about information management.
Mm.
From the inauguration speech of President Tinubu, I think what he was trying to do basically was to show that, look, as a new president, I'll be taking very tough decisions, but for the good of the country. I think that was what he was trying to do with that inauguration speech. It was a speech that, gave a lot of promises. And I must say those are very, very high promises, high targets that he has given to himself. Because as it is, for those that were not able to read his 88-page Renewed Hope Manifesto, his inauguration speech was a kind of summary of the targets he has given to himself as president. And that is easy to deal with, really, because that's about 2 or 3 pages. So it will be easy for people to continue to remind him about the promises he made on his inauguration day. So on the issue of subsidy, I guess he was just trying to also position himself that, look, as I give you hope, as I talk to you about the things I'm planning for the good of the country, I will also be taking very tough decisions for the betterment of the country. And that was why I think he addressed the subsidy issue the way he did. Now, information management, like you just pointed out, Sandra, is very, very important, because as it is now, the government is now trying to clarify that statement of subsidy is gone. That, look, it's not an immediate thing. He was only just referring to the fact that, look, it is not captured in the budget beyond June. And so, it is something that we may not see return. Again, how he's going to, how he wants to manage it to ensure that Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, I keep emphasizing on ordinary Nigerians, don't feel the brunt of subsidy removal the way he wants to do it now, is what we don't have a complete clarity on. But again, I think the new president should please understand that, look, Nigerians are already on the edge. Nigerians are apprehensive. There's a lot of distrust between the government and the governed. And information management that helps, to give people the right perception is very, very important at this time. Because again, perception is key. To any successful government, you must ensure that you have the people on your side. You must ensure that, look, when you bring up policies, even without you pushing too hard, the people are ready to stand by you and defend those policies because there's clarity and they have a good understanding of what you are trying to achieve. So again, I think information management is key here, Sandra.
All right, thank you very much, Fuad. But then I'm going to bring you back a bit from the report that I have here in the papers, that a statement by the president's team said Tinubu's declaration on subsidy is gone was merely communicating the status quo, considering that the previous administration's budget did not carry, funding for subsidy for the second half of the year. What about that? That this decision is not a Tinubu administration decision, that the president was merely communicating what, he met on ground, that which is the status quo.
You see, again, I agree that, look, what he said on that day, now, I think the presidency is now trying to clear it, that, look, he was only explaining that, look, things in the budget, subsidy is not captured beyond June. It means that as it is today, as I'm talking to you as president, subsidy is gone. But again, he didn't go further with that statement to say, okay, this is what I'm now going to do. Are we going to make special budgetary provision to capture it for another 1 or 2 months for me to be able to really put the things in place I want to do before we eventually say bye-bye to subsidy? Because again, look, Sandra, we all agree that subsidy has to go because of the way we have managed it in Nigeria. It has become a demon. It has become a cesspit of corruption. And I think there's a general consensus that it has to go. The controversy is always on how and when subsidies should go. And the reason why everybody is a bit worried about how we are going to manage subsidies is because of the impact it is going to have on ordinary Nigerians. That's number one. The second reason why people are a bit, cautious about this idea of remove subsidy the way they want to do it is that, look, the government in the past have not been able to gain the trust of the people in the management of funds. Yesterday, I was asking Sage, this is not the first time we are removing subsidy, Sandra. We removed subsidy on kerosene. That was why the price of kerosene jumped from around 150 naira to almost 1,000 naira. It meant that we have saved money for years on kerosene. The monies we saved on kerosene, where is that money now? What have we been able to do with it? We removed subsidy from diesel. That was why it moved from around 240 naira to 800 naira per liter. The monies we saved on diesel, what have we been able to do? So people even have a trust issue. When the government comes to tell us that, look, when we remove subsidy, the money we save, we are going to channel it into other developmental issues. Nigerians don't trust the government again, and you cannot blame them. Because this is a government, year in, year out, from 1999 till date, that has continually failed them on a lot of promises they've made. So you can't blame them, really, for having that trust issue. So that's why I'm saying that, look, the information managers of this current administration must always feel the pulse of the people, must understand them, and also ensure that proper communication is done to win them to their side. So even when they are taking decisions that are tough, that will affect them, they will support them because they understand the direction of government. So communication, again, very, very important, Sandra.
All right. Thank you very much. Also, the position of the stakeholders now, major stakeholders as regards, the subsidy situation. We have the fact that MOMAN, that's Major Oil Marketers Association, and the Depot and Petroleum Marketers Association, that's DAPMAN, issued a statement in support of subsidy removal. While we have IPMAN is Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, which services over 70% of the country. We also have Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria, that's Petron. This group boasts of 8,000 fuel stations. Now, if we have these two major stakeholders in the oil sector opposing the move, stressing that proper planning is necessary to remove subsidy. Those are the positions of the various major stakeholders in the oil industry. However, moving forward now, we have here that before subsidy, the national president of Petron, that's Dr. Billy Gillis Harry, said that removing subsidy, I'm quoting, removing subsidy without adequate planning would compound the challenges already faced by the masses. According to him, NNPC and Dangote refineries ought to be running before the federal government goes ahead with the plan to remove subsidies, adding that without a countrywide and industry-focused stakeholders engagement, the removal would backfire.
You see, Sandra, this statement by the president of Petron is the same statement made by President Tinubu in 2012 when Goodluck Jonathan, then president, was going to remove subsidy. The same thing. I think that statement is even trending on Twitter. It's on social media. In 2012, that was the exact statement. Now President Tinubu made, then when subsidy was going to be removed this way. That look, yes, we have all agreed that subsidy has to go, but it must be done tactfully. Stakeholders must all buy into the idea. Clear timelines must be set. Ideas on self-sufficiency as far as petroleum products in Nigeria must be clear and available on the table for all to see. Because the major issue, Sandra, why are people afraid of subsidy removal? It is because people are afraid that if you remove subsidy, can Nigerians cope? If the price of PMS move from 185 naira per liter to say, for example, 500 naira per liter, would other Nigerians cope? The reason why Nigerians are not shouting about kerosene at almost 1,000 naira per liter is because, look, people have an alternative. Not a lot of Nigerians even use kerosene anyways. I think there's gas as an alternative, even though it is also very expensive. Look, if we really want to talk about vulnerable Nigerians, Sandra, poor of the poor in Nigeria, let me tell you, they don't even cook again, Sandra. The real vulnerable Nigerians cannot even afford to cook in their houses again in Nigeria. That's the level of poverty we have in Nigeria.
All right.
How many Nigerians live below $1 per day?
All
How
right.
many Nigerians?
All right. But let me just quickly ask so we can wrap up on this particular story as we have other stories to also look at. What about, the marketers, jumping the gun and then, shutting down filling stations and pump price, the hike in the pump price immediately after the pronouncements, not as if any action had been taken. And I'd also like to get your analysis of different state governors who had to send out some task force officials to ensure that sell at the normal price or be shut down.
Well, again, all of that was avoidable if information management was better done, if you understand what I'm saying. Because again, basically what the government needed to do, again, whatever has happened, the statement has been made, the panic has happened, petroleum owners have shut down their stations, you now have a lot of queues, there's a lot of pain out there. But what I think is that, look, all of that was really avoidable. Again, most of these petrol stations owners, especially when you talk about independent petroleum marketers and the smaller ones, don't even get their supply directly from the NNPC depots or the private depot owners. They lash on onto Moman, which are the major marketers for their own products. So if you run a business in Nigeria, Sandra, you understand why if statements like that are made and there's no clarity, there will be as a business owner because you don't know what's going to happen next. Because a lot of them didn't get their supplies directly. They get it from these major marketers and they don't know what prices they are going to get next. I'm not justifying the reason why they are doing what they are doing. I'm just saying that, look, the panic could have been avoided if the government had managed this information better.
All right, thank you very much. We have to move on to other stories. More details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Okay, it's actually a long read, well detailed. You can get a lot of details from then on, as well as NLPC's reaction to that particular situation. Moving on now, we also have Tinubu reinstates sanity as DSS EFCC squabble over property in Lagos. The story is on page 3. We were having a conversation yesterday, Fuad, that the DSS allegedly stormed EFCC office, saying that there was an issue of squabble over the property ownership and all. So what we have now is that that conflict between the DSS and the EFCC over that building number 15, Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos, appeared to have taken a dirty twist. As it is now, the incident earned a place in the archive of the new administration as one of the first interventions of the president. So what we have is that operatives of the DSS had barricaded entrance to the EFCC's office. Meanwhile, the DSS issued a counter statement denying they barricaded the premises and claiming it was only occupying its own facility. According to the statement released by presidential spokesperson Tunde Rahman, the president directed DSS to immediately vacate the office of the EFCC in Ikoyi, Lagos, adding, if there were issues between the two important agencies of government, they would be resolved amicably. What? The DSS and the EFCC.
You see, Sandra, the kind of disorderliness, the kind of, how do I put it now? How disorganized the last presidency was. Really, I don't think we want to see it again. Because these are two agencies of the federal government under the executive, fighting over an office space. Completely embarrassing, Sandra. And those were the things we saw consistently in the last administration. Where you had the DSS saying one thing, the EFCC saying another thing, and then even the presidency saying something else. And again, governance is about perception, it's about the optics that people see. When people begin to have a perception that the government is not organized, there's nothing that you bring on the table that they will trust. So I think the presidency must be very firm now. Ajibola met Tinubu as the new president now, must be very firm on these people. I understand that there's a carryover effect of the indiscipline that pervaded the last administration. And we must not see a replication of that in this new government. How would they be fighting? What was the fight between office space that a simple correspondence cannot resolve? So you have to take the DSS storming the EFCC office and barricading it and allowing staff from not going into the office. Look at how chaotic in the 21st century, in a country that's supposed to be organized with learned people, having that happening. So I think the president knows what to do. He's a man of so much principles. I trust his judgment when it comes to his ability to organize things and get things done. Honestly, I must say, we are going to see a departure, I must say, from what we saw in the last 8 years. Because we need to tidy these things up. It's embarrassing. When we saw the 2 years, I was in the same government, even when the headline, when I read the headline, Sandra, DSS storms EFCC office. Yeah, DSS storms EFCC office.
The interesting thing is I don't understand how it's storming or no storming, because they both occupy that building. So apparently it is the other half of the building that belongs to EFCC that was shut off. So that's where the conversation is, because they've both been in that
shut
same
off from
building.
Who, really?
That's where the confusion is coming in now, because they've both been in that building. The EFCC and the DSS have both been cohabiting in that building for about 20 years.
So were they fighting for parking space?
Parking space. If they are fighting for parking space for Fuhad, would it affect the entire building? People accessing their offices?
What were they quarreling over?
Well,
that yesterday. There must have been something now. Or the papers are just excited. There is reporting nothing.
As it is now, the DSS is saying that it is not true that the DSS barricaded EFCC from entering their office.
We saw pictures, Sandra.
What the DSS said, it is not true.
Okay, we take it that. But I just say that we need to tidy up the presidency. Really.
Yes,
so we don't see this embarrassing.
I completely agree with you. Thank you very much. More details on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Very quickly now, we have quite a lot of stories. I'd appreciate if we can run really fast. Okay, we also have here Adedoyin, 2 hoteliers to die by hanging over murder of OAU students. So finally, we have some sort of closure, I'm guessing, yes, on the master's student that lost his life in Ile-Ife. So what we have is that an Osun State High Court sitting in Oshogbo sentenced the owner of Hilton Honors Hotel, Ile-Ife, Ramon Adedoyin, to death by hanging for murder of Timothy Adegoke, a postgraduate student of the Obafemi Awolowo University. The judge declared that the prosecution, through its circumstantial evidences, proved beyond reasonable doubt that Adedoyin, some of his workers, and others at large were culpable in the murder, having tried to cover up his death by removing CCTV cameras in the hotel, doctoring hotel lodger statement, administering oath, and dumping the remains of the hotel guest. So, the judge therefore found Adedoyin guilty of murder, conspiracy, and concealing evidence, and also sentenced him to 25 years in prison. Is he after he has been hanged or before he's going to be hanged?
Well, if he's going to die by hanging, then I don't understand the part of sentencing 25 years again. Really, because again, I've not been able to read the complete judgment. But again, like you said, this is a form of closure to that case that has brought a lot of public interest to the safety of people when they go into hotels. Because that was really the issue, how safe are our hotels? If a master's student traveled to Ife for his master's, for his exams, he had to lodge in a hotel and eventually lost his life in that manner. I'm reading the story, Sandra. Look at how they were trying to conceal evidence, removing CCTV cameras, to the extent that they had to even dump his corpse somewhere. I think it took days for people to really know where he was buried and all of that. They had to take the outcry of journalists, of family members, and I think Femi Falana SAN was also the one in charge of this case, pro bono for the family, because it was also going to be a case of, people using their might and power to override the interest of the family. But now there's a judgment, but again, there's still an opportunity for them to appeal this particular judgment. And so most likely it's going to go on appeal. But again, it is what it is. And I think it raises a lot of questions on the safety of our hotels. What goes on in our hotels, the safety protocols, and then what Nigerians too must watch out for before they lodge in any hotel, really. It's very important for safety reasons.
All right, thank you very much. Similarly, aside from Adedoyin, just as mentioned earlier, the court also convicted the hotel manager, Oyetunde Kazeem, and another worker, Dini Adirogba, for conspiracy because they participated in the dumping of the corpse inside the bush. They were the ones that cleared the room where the victim was lodged, and also they burned the bedspreads that the deceased used in the room. So it's a lot of cover up for something that you didn't do. So that's but
So
then
that they claim they didn't do. But
they
they
claim that they didn't do.
yeah,
Exactly.
somebody lost and something happened, maybe cardiac arrest and died. Why are you covering up evidence?
Thank you.
Why don't you just report to the police? Then why remove CCTV?
More details on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. I get the details there. We also have here, court justifies government's no work, no pay rule against ASU. And that is on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. So very quickly, the National Industrial Court has upheld the no work, no pay rule by the federal government in the suit filed against ASU, Academic Staff Union of Universities. The president of the court, Justice Benedict Kaib, held that the rule was within the law. He held that in line with Section 43(1)(a) of the Trade Union Act, members of ASU who participated in the 8-month-long strike are not entitled to salaries. According to the court, it is within the right of the federal government to withhold salaries of workers who embark on an industrial action. The court also held that it is a violation of university autonomy for the government to impose IPs on ASU members who reserve the right to determine how their salaries should be paid. So, Fuad, the court said, yes, federal government doesn't have to pay you.
No work,
but
no
then,
pays in order.
Yes, but then,
imposition was wrong.
Exactly. So now that the imposition of IPs is wrong on the workers, can they counter sue?
Well, Sandra.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, there are two issues here.
Yes.
That the industrial court made pronouncement on. The fact that, look, the independence of the university means that, look, an imposition of a payment structure, it's a salary payment structure, in the form of IPPIS was wrong.
Yes.
And that, look, the fact that the university system wanted UTAS was the right thing that the government should have done. But I didn't expect the court to rule otherwise on the idea of no work, no pay, really, because that has always been the standard, really, for most industrial actions. And if you remember this ASU thing, I said something to the ASU leadership that, look, they have themselves to blame. I've been a unionist and I understand how the drill works, Sandra. The reality is that before you go into any form of industrial action, before you go into any form of industrial action, you must have what is called an entry and exit plan. We are going into this action. What are the deliverables? What are we trying to achieve? 1, 2, 3. You look at the things you can concede. If you are able to get it or not get it, what is the exit plan? How do we negotiate ourselves again to get to a point where we are not going to suffer any consequences? And that was why, look, before you call off the strike, what was the exit plan? What was the negotiation plan with government? I felt the government was smarter than them, really, as far as the last industrial election was concerned. I also felt that they didn't get a proper legal counsel on what they were supposed to do to be able to get their salary. There were things they could have done to still get their salary, and there are still things they can do to get no salary.
I think I remember, Barrister Oko was always saying that, they should have just gone to the industrial court rather than embarking on strike.
I'm not going for or against that position. But I'm saying that I will not say it on radio. But I know that, look, there are things ASU could have done that despite all of the days on strike, they would have still been able to get their pay. It's part of what you put on the negotiation table, have an issue. But again, it is what it is. I think ASU has also learned their lessons and other unions before they proceed on any strike to have an entry and exit plan.
All right. Thank you very much. More details on page 5 of The Guardian. We also have here Population Commission, 200 billion naira vote and botched 2023 census. Fuhad, yes, we are back to this conversation. Yes, the census has been postponed, but what about the money that we spent on preparations?
Which money?
200 billion naira.
You just said it now. We spend it on preparation. So what are you looking for again?
That's not
Sandra.
That's not fair. It's not fair, Fuhad.
You just said it that we spent it on preparation. So is that what I've done with preparation now?
You need to.
Preparation.
All right, so declaration by the chairman of National Population Commission, Nasir Isakwara, that the commission had spent 200 billion naira on preparations for the 2023 population and housing census before it was cancelled, has kept reactions coming. Kwara had declared that the commission budgeted 800 billion, out of which 200 billion was approved, and so far they have spent it. He said
they budgeted 800 billion.
And they gave them 200 for preparation.
That's close to 1 trillion to do population census.
Yes. He said that the 800 billion naira included salaries from 2014.
Okay.
So they have been owing an MPC salary from
staff,
yes,
2014.
So they are going to back.
And the workers have been working.
So they are going
and
to
surviving.
They'll pay them in arrears.
Are they not federal government workers?
It is the national.
You know, it's strange. It's a federal agency now.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So they've been owing them from 2014, or I don't know. That's
almost, that's 9 years.
And they've been going to work.
I don't know if they've been going to work. I don't work at the NPC, but according to Kwara, the shifting of the census is said is a blessing in disguise, hoping that it would afford the commission the opportunity to realize pledges made by donor agencies and corporate organizations, though he did not disclose on how much has been realized so far. Didn't disclose how much has been realized so far. So meaning that we may still have the census, right?
It would be nice to know what kind of preparation they are talking about.
Training of officials. Training of officials.
Not on training.
And adult
stuff. It would be nice to have the details of the preparation. Have they printed all of the papers for enumeration? Are we going to have some form of digital enumeration? Maybe people are going to turn print.
According to the breakdown, I have here that the 2023 population census is expected to be green census, involving the use of digital map, digital questionnaire, cloud computing to ensure compliance with the global climate change campaign and all of that.
Cloud computer, green what?
Green census, green. No,
I'm going to be
nothing to disturb.
I'm going to be using devices.
Global climate.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Look, I participated in the last census, Sandra, as a supervisor in Taraba State. I was a supervisor
in 2006
in this local government. Yes, Suntei local government in Taraba State. And I know that there's nothing digital that can enumerate that local in most interior part of that area. And if you understand the demography of Nigeria, Sandra, it's not a doctored one. And again, we have spent 200 billion, that's the story. The new government can check the books to see whether indeed.
Planning since 2014. That's why we have backlog of salaries to be paid.
Okay, so the planning is
salaries of workers. So the planning has been since 20. They've been planning for this 2023 census since 2014.
Planning what exactly?
It was on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. Let's move on now. You're listening to Trends in the Papers on mainland 98.3 FM. Thank you very much for listening to us and enjoy yourself. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move on now to the Punch newspaper. Before I go on, we're also live on Facebook and YouTube. In case now to the Punch newspaper, I have here major headline: subsidy, fuel sells at 600 naira per litre, queues worsen as filling stations shut. And their riders fund subsidy again. Owes NNPCL 2.8 trillion naira, says Kyari. Kwara, Ekiti, Bayelsa governors, others warn marketers against picked, from this. I also saw it in the Guardian, but I felt it to be in the other papers. So very quickly, Fuad, the federal government is.
You see, Sandra, I'm going to appeal to President Bola Tinubu. I think the appeal is for the other Nigerians who had high hopes for the return of democracy in 1999. That look, better things were going to happen to them. On behalf of those Nigerians, I'm not talking of privileged Nigerians now, but I'm part of the other Nigerians now. We want to beg President Bola Tinubu to please do an immediate forensic audit of the NNPC from 1999 till today. Do you see why it is extremely difficult to have probity and accountability on the subsidy regime? Every year, we keep hearing that there are budgetary provisions for what? For subsidy payment. But in real fact, I listened to Mele Kyari yesterday saying that, look, the government has actually not been able to pay for subsidy. It has been the NNPC helping the government to pay. So you have NNPC, understand what I'm saying? So who is regulating the figure now? The NNPC is in charge of importation. They are in charge of distribution. They are in charge of giving us what we do every day in terms of daily consumption. And they are still the ones paying themselves. So who checks the books? Who audits the books to know whether there has been padding, inflation, and all of that on those figures? And that's why up till today, there are still questions about the daily figures given to us by NNPC. People are still asking, how do you churn out the same daily consumption every day, even when there's public holiday? It is still 60-something million liters. When people don't, even during the pandemic, during lockdown, it is something million liters. You remember, Sandra, recently, the customs and NNPC were even still arguing that, look, it's 93 million liters, 63 million liters. At the point, the customs were even saying that, look, most of these fuel are even diverted. So I want to beg the president, the new president, please, we need a complete forensic independent audit of the NNPC.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We have to move from that story. More details on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Just as Fuhad has clearly stated, the NNPC is saying that they have been the one since about 2022. Yes, the ending of 2022, they have been the one paying to funding subsidy because the federal government couldn't afford to. That's basically what that means. Moving on from that story, National Assembly anti-zoning group condemns alleged plan to arrest Betara and Yari. The story is on page 7. Very, very quickly now, just quickly run through. What we have is that a civil society organization, Northern Alliance for Democracy, has called on the ruling APC to wash its hands off the selection of principal officers at the National Assembly. The group said the lawmakers are empowered by the Constitution to choose their leaders as against the practice in the Constitution. They also raised the alarm of a witch hunt of the duo of Aliu Betara and Abdulaziz Yari, who are aspirants for the House of Rep Speaker and Senate President, respectively. There are sources, according to them, that the ruling party, or that some elements in the leadership of the party, have vowed to get EFCC, DSS, ICPC to threaten, intimidate, and invite both of them for questioning on trumped-up charges with a view to frustrating their aspirations. For just in two seconds, if possible.
No, I'll read in 20 seconds. What's the name of the group?
Northern Alliance for Democracy.
Oh, okay. And all of they are saying, whatever they are saying are just allegations, right?
Yes, according to them.
Let's just move on then.
Okay. More story to detail on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. We also have here 11 trillion naira spent on moribund refineries in 13 years. And that is coming from our representatives. The story is on page 30.
How much you don't say, sorry?
11 trillion naira. The House of Reps.
On what?
That the federal government.
On moribund refineries.
Yes. So that's coming from the House of Reps and the House Committee on State of Refineries in the country. And the chairman of the committee, Ganiu Johnson, however, failed to convince the Deputy Speaker to consider the report. Wase, that's the Deputy Speaker, Ahmed Wase, dismissed the recommendations by the committee as failing to address the main issues for which the panel was set up, as well as not far-reaching enough to change the current situation of things. According to the panel, the total cost of rehabilitation within the period is 11 trillion naira, while the additional cost in other currencies are about $592 million, 4.8 million euros, and 3.4 million pounds. There's a breakdown. You can get the breakdown on page 30. It's a long read, but the point is that they broke down the total cost of operations and the running the refineries from 2010 to 2020 is put about a certain peg. That the Port Harcourt refinery company carried out rehabilitation project for 7 years, and it was valued at over 12 trillion naira. Over 12 billion. Apologies.
It's for 7 years. And one man built a refinery in 6 years.
In 6
A
years.
new one.
That's Port Harcourt.
And
That the Warri refinery, had their own over a period of 6 years. The Kaduna had their own rehabilitation work over the period under review. All of this put together, we have the total cost of rehabilitation for the 3 refineries based on the submissions of NNPC from 2013 to 2019 is put at over 42 billion only, and that there are other projects.
As a matter of national emergency,
Yes.
and for the soul and spirit of the nation,
Yes.
again, I want to appeal to President Bola Tinubu to quickly, set up a legal framework that will have us take a decisive step on these refineries. I think enough is enough. I think we need to say enough is enough. If we decide to sell them, so be it. If we decide to concession them, so be it. If we decide to have a consortium come together to operate it, where government becomes a major shareholder or a partial shareholder, so be it. But I think putting money into these refineries for rehabilitation or what we call turnaround maintenance has to stop, Sandra. That's another cesspit of corruption that we need to immediately block. And that's what I would say on that story.
Thank you very much, Fuad. The story is on page 30. And finally, from the Punch newspaper, Tinubu inherits over 16 trillion naira uncompleted projects. And that one is on page 26 of the Punch. And also, very quickly, I'll be rushing through. The president has officially inherited 16.29 trillion naira uncompleted projects from his predecessor. The projects were identified through the National Monitoring and Evaluation Platform, IMAC. And there's a breakdown of all of the projects that were under review. One of such projects is the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which reportedly costs about 315 billion naira and is said to be at 85% completion. They have postponed that one now, though. Still have stories on that particular one, why it has been delayed and whatnot. But then there's also the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline. There's also the Border-Bonny Road. All of the projects are listed here on page 26 of the Punch newspaper. So, inheriting of all of this, should we wait for the announcement of who becomes Minister of Works and Housing before we start having conversations, or is there anything that the president can do to kick the ground running as regards all of these projects that are uncompleted?
Well, this project should be quick wins for the new government. These are part of the things we call quick wins. Quickly go into it, check the books, make monies available, engage the contractors to quickly complete this project, so that they can serve as some form of quick wins. That look, okay, we're able to, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is completed, this is completed. These are things that they can quickly resolve and sort out. So I think that's what the government would do, since it's even a government of the same party. And I'm sure during the transition meeting, they would have also exchanged notes on some of these projects, their current state, what's left, and all of that. I think whoever becomes Minister of Works should not even initiate new projects yet. Go into these projects, complete them, and then we move into new things. So this should be quick win for the new government, I think.
Especially as they're all projects that, I don't know, I think well, just as you've mentioned, let's just leave it at that. More details on page 26 of the Punch newspaper. Thank you very much. Yes, you are still listening to Trends in the Papers. We'll be wrapping up in a minute or so. But before then, I think we've treated the major stories that are trending across all of the papers this morning, because we have the same stories on The Nation and as well on Vanguard newspaper. That is as regards petrol subsidy removal, not immediate, says presidency. That's the major headline on the front page of Vanguard. We also have here, ASU, court oppose federal government's no work, no pay. We also have the story as regards Adegoke's murder. And even on the front page of The Nation, the story as regards the federal government owing NNPCL 2.8 trillion naira. That's also on the front page of The Nation. And yes, the proceedings before a United States court in which President Bola Tinubu allegedly forfeited $460,000 was a civil case. A lawyer and first petitioner witness in the petition by Labour Party and its candidate yesterday told the PEPC. So that is proceedings from the court reports from the court proceedings at the Presidential Election Petition Court. People have forgotten that we have that. That's the ongoing.
People are forgetting it. No, I'm not. I don't think people have forgotten. Well, I'm sure the supporters of the president may have forgotten, but I'm sure those on the other side, the Labour Party, PDP people, who will never forget. They know they are in court, and it's part of the process. Even the president acknowledged that in his inaugural speech.
Yes, he did.
That look, it's still part of democracy, and so he acknowledged that people are still in court.
Yes. All right, thank you very much, Fuhad Saheed. Appreciate your analysis this morning. However, we'll be back by 8:40 for Mainland Focus, where we'll pick 2 or 3 major trending stories, flesh them out, and then open up the phone line for you to be a part of the conversation. Once again, our appreciation to Hussein Akoni and Ige Matthew, who watched the program live on YouTube. When we come back, we'll also be live on YouTube and Facebook. So in the meantime, my name is Omobola Sandra, and you're listening to Mainland 98.3 FM.